Thank you. Yes, I'm Drew, product owner at Jamf, specifically the product owner for self-service. Also here with me today is Chris. He's a senior software engineer at Jamf, and he's also been one of the engineers that have been working on the self-service project. Before we get started, I'd like to actually give a huge thanks to Team Thundersnow. They're the brains behind all this work that you're going to be seeing today. They've been working extremely hard. We started the middle of last December, so it's been 10 months of working extremely hard and staying focused on this project, and extremely excited to show their work they've been working on since then. Kind of get into it, why did Jamf have a self-service? Well, we wanted to create a delightful end-user experience, while adding value to the Apple experience. And not only that, being able to create an easy-to-use tool that allows your end users to install items that they want when they want without having to use IT to do that. And over the last 10 months, we've been listening and have been working hard to improve self-service, so we actually have 6 great things to show you today. So actually, let's get right into it with the overall UI. We received a lot of feedback, which makes sense. It impacts every end user. And with that, I mentioned earlier in the keynote that we did a focus group last JNUC to get a better understanding of what key features we wanted in self-service, as well as where we would like to take self-service not only for version 10 but also beyond. And they helped us prioritize those importance and determine what we would want to get to today as well as into the future. And it also helped create that foundation for the new Jamf Self-Service that you'll see today and allow us to add new features going beyond that. Also with that, we had our UX team come up with multiple prototypes for us and did user testings with that so we can determine what workflows work best as well as the overall UI layout. So if we can bring up the new self-service. There you go. Perfect. So yes, this is the overall new look of the UI of self-service. It's a modern app. It's written in all Swift. It's a fresh new look, but yet familiar for the end users. So kind of to get into that, we have the toolbar up above, and in that toolbar we have the dedicated tabs, the library, updates, and downloads. And with those, the end user can get to all the information that they want when they want to. Also in that toolbar, we also have a dedicated icon for notifications where they can always go and get access to the notifications that come in. New notifications that come in as well as ones that they may have previously seen. Also in there in the upper left-hand corner is a refresh button for them where they can click on any time they are in self-service. It will refresh self-service for them. And then with that, it will update any new content that is available for them. So if the admin decided to update something in the middle of the day, they're in self-service, they can click that and get that content available. Also, as we have this login button, which is right below that toolbar. You'll be able to click on that login button, and the user will be able to log in and log out of there. Also, if you use user-based VPP, they'll be able to click that login button and see that invitation that is there waiting for them. If they click that, they can accept that, go on, accept that invitation, and then from there, install their VPP applications. Also in there, over on the left-hand side, is we have this categories pane, or the left pane, where all the categories will be listed. One of the new categories is the all category, where they can click and actually see all the content that is available for them in self-service. Also to note, in there, right below that category list, we will have eventually plugins that is in current development, so they'll be able to access their plugins right there as well. Also, as you can see, is when he clicks those categories, all that information populates off on the right-hand side, and it's just a great place where they can go and get their information. Also to note with this is that it is a responsive app, so they'll be able to adjust the window to whatever size they would like, and it will adjust that content accordingly, so nothing is being cut off for them, no icons, buttons, text, or anything like that. And if we can get back to the screens. Sorry for the delay here. Yeah, can we get back to the slides, please? One moment. Thank you. Perfect. And it kind of brings us to the second thing I want to talk about. We all know that customers want to be able to brand self-service. It was the number 3 feature request on Jamf Nation for Jamf Pro. And with the new self-service that you're seeing, you'll actually be able to do that in here, which kind of leads to the question, what can you actually brand in self-service? So if we take a look, the first thing that you have is the icon in there. By default, it's set up with this self-service logo. If you wanted to actually brand that, it would just change to something like this. Here's just a reference of the new and approved Jamf logo. And then we also have the self-service name. By default, it's set as self-service. If you wanted to actually brand that, let's use JNUC 2016, and that will be sitting in there, as well as a self-service if you want to utilize that. The other part of the branding is this large branding header image, which is in the back, which is right behind that icon name, the account button, and it also extends up right behind that toolbar. So if you wanted to change this to a colored image or, say, a picture of something, you could actually do that as well. So here's a picture of Minneapolis showing that. Also with that, you're probably wondering with that login page. So with that login page, by default, it's set up like this. It has the user's credentials where they can enter that. Another thing we added to this login page is the Remember Me checkbox. So if you want to utilize that for your end users, they can click that, and it'll remember their credentials and save that in Keychain. But to go back to branding, so if you decided to brand your icon and your name, that will show up on this page or on the login page as well, and that will reflect right here. To kind of go back into self-service, if you decided to brand all 3 things, this would be an example of what that would look like for your users. So by being able to brand, you allow your users to feel like this is your organization's tool, not a Jamf tool. But you're probably kind of wondering how easy it is to brand compared to if you're branding now with the current self-service. So we'll actually show you that with some live demoing with Chris here.
All right, so as you can see on my screen here, I've got the default setup for self-service. And so not much to see besides what we kind of expected from earlier with the slides. The self-service icon, self-service text, and a blank kind of black background for our banner image. So I'm going to spice it up like Drew was talking about by bouncing into Jamf Pro. And we'll take a look in computer management, go to self-service. And you'll see that there's now a new tab called branding. Go ahead and go into edit mode for that. You can see we have a preview of what's expected to be seen in self-service on the client. And this is, like I mentioned, the default setup. So I'm going to go to my desktop where I've got a couple branding images ready and try to make it look a little nicer. Now with the modern UI in Jamf Pro, we can drag and drop these items, luckily, and get a rich preview of what's about to be seen on the client when we save these settings. So I'll put kind of Minneapolis in the background here for the banner, change to the Jamf logo, and then the branding name is also customizable, both the header and a secondary text. We'll call it JNUC 2016 Rocks. Go ahead and save that. Now if I go ahead to the client, either relaunch or, since I already have it open, I'll just reload. You can see the branding changes take effect right away. We have JNUC 2016 Rocks, the Jamf logo, and the Minneapolis skyline in the background.
Perfect. Could we please flip back to the slides? Thank you. The third thing we want to talk about is being able to customize that for your end user when they're in self-service. So one of those things is, what you see today is this install button or action button. Now that we've been working on it, our team calls it the global action button because it just does more than just install an item for them. This global action button will provide feedback for them before, during, and after execution. So you'll be able to customize, for an example, for a policy. You install a policy and it stays in self-service. After you hit that install button, after it finishes and installs successfully, that button will flip for them and it'll flip to a reinstall button by default. As an admin, you'll have the ability to configure that the way you want, so you could change it to an update or an upgrade, but at least allowing your end user to know that, hey, I already have this item, but if I wanted to, maybe I want to reinstall it if necessary. Another example is working with apps and in-house ebooks. If they install something like that in self-service and it stays in self-service, that button will actually flip to an open button where they can, to an open button where they can actually open the app or the in-house ebook right from there. Another example is with iBooks coming from, or ebooks coming from the iBook store. They'll actually be able to, after they install it, that button will flip to an iBooks button where they can click that and it'll take them to the iBook store directly to that book where they can open or download or whatever they would like to right from there. As you can see, these button options are important because you want your users to clearly understand what they are able to do and where they're at in self-service. So this is just a great extra feature for them to have a better understanding of what state this piece of content is in through self-service. The other part is the additional feature with that global button is they'll be able to see the entire process of that item being installed right through that global button. We removed that progress bar that you see in the current self-service up on top, and now we're utilizing that global action button. So if they're in there and they decide to hit install, what they would see is letting them know that it's actually being executed. And then from executing, when it's getting close to be done, it'll allow them to know that, hey, this is actually finishing up. And then when it finishes it up and it's done successfully, they'll get a done with a green check mark to let them know it's done. And then, as I mentioned before with that policy that it stayed in self-service, it would actually flip and state reinstall, so at least they'll know that it's there and they have it. Another part where that customization comes in that you saw a little bit is with that account button. With that account button, when the user signs in, if they have a full name available in Jamf, self-service will pull that and represent that in when they do log in. If there is no full name, self-service will actually pull the username. So either way, it will pull a name for them to allow them to know that they're the ones that are actually logged in. So I'd like to actually switch back over to do a little more demo here to actually see how these action buttons work in self-service as well as that login button.
Thank you, Drew. So I'll start right where Drew left off. Like he mentioned, the login button's got a little more personalization around it than it used to in the old self-service. So I'm going to go ahead and log in under my username. And you'll notice that since I have some information and LDAP about this user, it actually populates with the user's first and last name rather than just the username. If that wasn't available, the username would be what's populated to let the end user know that they're logged in under this account. I'll flip to a category that's scoped to me for engineering resources. And I've got a combination of Mac apps and apps that are deployed through policies that are not in the App Store. So you can see we've got as good as an indication of what you can do with these items as we can based on the machine state. So I have Xcode installed, as you can see in my dock. Likewise, there's an open text on the button to let them know, hey, you can just go ahead and launch this app. You already have it. I'll view something that we deploy through a policy that I don't have installed, which is IntelliJ. And in the default state before it's installed, we just have the install button here. And like Drew mentioned, if I go ahead and install this, we have sort of a default for the button to go to, which in the case of policies like this is reinstall. If I wanted to customize this, however, to maybe give a little more indication as to what this thing is doing, if it's an ongoing policy or something that runs more than once, we can flip into Jamf Pro, where we've got some more customization now with the new self-service. So now, instead of just one button name like we've historically had, we now have a button name after installation. So anytime that this policy appears in self-service, after it has run successfully at least once, we can now give it some alternate text. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit repair to change the button text and customize that. And then I'll go ahead and refresh. And now you can see if I go to my Downloads tab, which we can see the history of items that are installed, it no longer says reinstall, it now says repair for IntelliJ after I've run it once successfully.
Sweet. Thank you.
Back to you, Drew?
Yes.
All right.
Can we flip back to the slides, please? The fourth thing we want to talk about is notifications. With notifications, we'll be able to support Apple push notifications with Mac operating systems running 10.9 and later. Also, we'll be able to support software update notifications as well. A thing to note with notifications, you'll be able to display notifications individually per content item. And you'll be able to notify your end users when items are added, as well as if you actually updated that at any certain time and you want to notify them again. And then the two different ways you would be able to notify them is one, through self-service as a soft notification, as well as utilizing the Apple push notifications, and it'd be sent to the notification center. So to kind of give you an idea, if you were in self-service, they would be able to click on that notification icon, which would show this drop-down, and show them all new notifications, as well as ones that they may have read. Another thing that we've included in the notification is that global action button. So if they have a notification and they see something that they're interested in, they can install it right there, rather than trying to search for it somewhere in self-service. Just a nice, easy way for them to get the content they want right away when they need it. The other part is the notification center. So with that, the notification will be sent out to them. What it will be sent as is a banner notification, and as you know, or if you don't, the user actually has the last say of how they will receive that, or if they even want a notification. But if they want to receive it, they'll see it as a banner, and they'll be able to interact by it. If they click on that banner, it'll bring them into self-service directly to that piece of content where they can decide, read up on it to get some more information, or actually install it right from there. Another part that kind of touches in with that is the other two tabs that we have up there that I mentioned earlier with the updates and the downloads. With the Updates tab, that contains all software title updates, which is dedicated for patch. So if you allow your users to initiate that upgrade, or that update, excuse me, of a patch, you'll be able to do that right from self-service. Also, we have the, oh, that jumped. The excuse me, I'm sorry. Just to give a little shout out for Patch, they had a session earlier this morning, but they're also having one tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So if you didn't have a chance to see it today, please come back tomorrow, where you can see how Patch works, as well as the way you can utilize self-service with that. Then we also have that Downloads tab. The Downloads tab has two functions. One, the first thing it can do is display the item currently being executed, and also it creates a queue for them. So if you have a user in there that installs multiple items at once, and they're not for sure which one's installing and which one will be next, they can jump over to that Downloads tab and actually see the one being installed and the ones that were supposed to, or that will be following after that. And then after it's done being installed, it'll actually jump down below into a history section. So then they'll have all that information of knowing what items they have executed in self-service, as well as a date when they did that. Also that we did, again, is we included that global action button in that history section. So if they by chance are in there and they're looking for something and they found out they have it, such as an app, they'll be able to open that app right from there. So kind of see how notifications will work, as well as that downloads that we showed you just shortly. Let's flip over to the demo and check that out.
Great. So, like Drew mentioned, we've got this notifications tab, which is sort of an inbox of messages that you can send to your end users to let them know that new content's available. We have this in the form of the soft notifications inbox here, or if you wish to be a little more intrusive and really get something in their face, we will have push notifications. I'm going to demo for you guys the in-app notifications here, which is sort of more the passive inbox form. You can see there is a content link with those, so we try to show them visually what this thing links to and also give the title. And you can customize the title of the notification and a little blurb about it if you wish to. The user can click the item to view more details if they're interested, or you can see that we actually have the action button embedded right within the notification cell if they wish to take action right there. The process for generating these notifications is pretty simple. I'm going to go back to Jamf Pro and take a look at, what am I looking at here? I want to go to a policy probably. You know, I really like the Markdown editor MAU, and I've heard a lot of developers are loving it, so I'm going to let people know that it's available in case they're using some lesser Markdown editor for some reason. So I'm going to go to the policy that installs that in Jamf Pro and go to the Self-Service tab. And if I edit the item, you'll see there is a notification checkbox. You do have to have notifications globally set back in the self-service management settings to allow this option. And if I go ahead and enable notification, you'll see I'm presented with two options. One is to just display the notification in self-service. The other is to do self-service and notification center. That second option, like we talked about a little bit, will actually put something through APNS, Apple Push Notifications, and get something in their notification center whether the app has been opened or not. We'll do the less intrusive one for now. And for the subject, I'll say markdown like a boss. Use this for all your markdown needs. Okay, so I've got a subject and a message. I'll go ahead and hit save. And now, if the user launches self-service, or if they go ahead and refresh the content by pretty much clicking anywhere in the app, you'll see we get a little blue badge that pops up on notifications. Sure enough, if I go and click on that, you'll see the new message is denoted with some bold text on the content that's related to it. And MAU is now available to me with my custom message for the end user. I'll go ahead and take action on it and go ahead and just hit install. And you'll see the same global button that we used in other parts of the demo so far is also in play within that notification cell. So I've run the policy successfully, and if I go to downloads, I can see that it's now in my history of things that I've successfully installed that are scoped to me. As Drew mentioned, the Downloads tab is meant to be sort of what you have that's scoped to you that's already been installed. The user can also take action if they feel that something is not installed properly. So I'll go back to IntelliJ, and I just don't think that really ran correctly. I'm going to go ahead and rerun the policy. And you'll see anything that's actively running goes to the top of the list and gets a white background so that the users can easily delineate what's currently executing versus what has executed successfully in the past. The other tab that is going to be available within the new self-service is updates, which is essentially the gateway for patch, like Drew mentioned. Here I've got Adobe Illustrator patch scoped to me based off of my machine setup, and the patch is set up in Jamf Pro. But for more on that, we'll defer to the patch session.
Yes, thank you.
No problem.
Can we flip back to the slides, please? The sixth thing we want to talk about is localization. With self-service, it will be localized in the following languages: English, French, German, and Japanese. This will all be done with version 10, and it will be all the hard-coded text that you see in self-service. So then you'll be able to customize that for your end users. A couple other features we want to talk about that are maybe done right now, like SSO and SAML support. That was in 9.9.3. That will also be available when self-service is released with version 10, and also plugins. Right now that's currently in development, but with plugins, we are making some enhancements to them. I mentioned one of them this morning. The first one is you'll be able to change the plugin's name that is shown in self-service. So if you want to make it a little bit better for your users or make it a little more meaningful for them, you can change that in Jamf Pro to something like bookmarks or resources, something like that, and that will be displayed for them in self-service. And then also you'll be able to scope plugins the same way that you would scope any other piece of content. So then you can just get those plugins directly to the individuals or to the computers that you would want. You may have a couple questions about how you'd get self-service for Mac OS. So as I mentioned kind of earlier, self-service will be available with the release of Jamf Pro version 10 on Macs running 10.9 and later. So then you might have another question is, what happens to the current self-service? Well, the current self-service will still be available. Your users will still be able to use it the way the functionality is today, and that will be for versions 10.5 through 10.8. So most organizations might have a mix of this. So anyone running 10.5 through 10.8 will still run on the current self-service. Anyone running on 10.9 and later will be running on the newer enhanced self-service. Kind of just give you a recap of what we covered today. It was a lot of new UI look, and as well as a little bit of the demo of what the potential for self-service when we release it. But the overall of the new UI, so it's a better user experience, but also familiar for your end users. The one big key is that you want to be able to brand self-service. So now we have that ability to brand self-service, and you'll be able to configure that right in Jamf Pro. Also that customization for your end users, allowing them to know what the state of that item is in self-service with that initial action button, and then also that secondary action button with the install to reinstall or install to open, something like that. The other one is notifications. We will support Apple push notifications, as well as an admin, you'll be able to determine what notifications are being sent out per content item and how that notification is being seen by your user. Is it being seen in self-service, or are you also utilizing Apple push notifications through the notification center? And also we have those updates and those downloads tabs. The updates is dedicated for the patch updates that are available for your users, and then the downloads tab where they can go and see what items are actually being executed right now when they're in self-service, as well as that history of all the items they have executed previously. And then localization, being able to have it localized in English, French, German, and Japanese. Hopefully, as you can see through our presentation today, that self-service is an incredible tool that empowers people with Apple technology while providing a rich end-user experience for your users. So we can't wait for you to get your hands on this with the new self-service, and you'll be able to do that with the Jamf beta program. So make sure you join the program so you can check out Jamf Pro coming later. Also, if you have any questions following this that we don't answer today, or just want to learn more about self-service, we do have a product marketing or product management booth on the 4th floor. We'll be there all week, so if you have any questions or want to talk more, please come talk to us, or at least come find me. I'll be walking around, or at least right there. Also, I have another follow-up session, so if you know someone that wants to learn a little bit more that are here this week, we'll be here on Thursday at 1:30 again to kind of run through this demo and presentation. So with that, I actually want to thank you all for joining us today. It has been great to actually show us what Team Thundersnow has been working on for the last 10 months. Also, thank you, Chris, for doing the demoing portion. And once again, thank you to our team for working so hard to get us to this point. So thank you.
All right. So as you can see, we've been making a lot of changes. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to say the team has worked really hard on this, and we know that, like Dean said, it's our product, but it's also your product. So we really are going to continue to iterate on this. This is the first and a really exciting launch. But not to spoil what's coming next, which is roadmap and strategy, so that you're aware, we're going to continue to work on self-service throughout 2017. So we've made a lot of improvements, as they've shown, but we're looking for feedback, and we have actually a ton of questions from the community here. So I don't know if that's just because of the topic, or if Wi-Fi is working really well, cellular is working really well for you. But we have a lot of questions, so I'll get through as many as we can. We've got about 12 minutes here. I'll start off just here with talking a little bit about branding. So one of the questions was, when you look at the branding of self-service, is that something that you can scope to sites, for example?
Currently, we do not have that functionality. That is not the first time I've heard that request, so that is something that we are tracking right now and getting some more feedback on. But there could be potential for that, yes.
Okay, and we had a question that was answered, but in case you haven't been following the thread, one of the questions was, is there Active Directory integration for logins? As you know, with the current self-service, we do the SAML SSO, the LDAP integration. That will continue with the new version as well. One of the other questions was about self-service for iOS. So if you could maybe say a few words about that.
Yeah, sure. Right now with Team Thundersnow, we are focusing on the Mac OS self-service. We want to get to a certain point where we feel comfortable that we've made the necessary changes to make a great end-user experience. But with that, there is potential in our roadmap to actually start focusing on the iOS side, so we can bring that parity between both of them. There might be a little bit, they might touch on a little bit of that in next session. So,
very good. Also related to, again, a lot of branding questions. So what about naming the app and the app icon? So changing the icon in the dock, the app name.
Changing the app name is something that we've always supported and will continue to. Changing the icon is something we're looking into currently. We definitely understand that people do this as part of their workflow right now, and we definitely want to help you guys out. The reason that it's a little bit more complicated this time around is because we're supporting Apple push notifications. We get into Apple code signing, which, if any of you have had to deal with, is not always a very straightforward thing. Suffice to say that that icon that goes in your dock for the self-service app, or any app for that matter, is something that falls under the code signature for the app. So we're working on a set of guidelines to help you if you wish to do this. Re-sign the app through a sort of a knowledge base article, I guess. And we're also looking into what your options would be to support push notifications if you wanted to still do that after changing the code signature.
Very good. All right.
No problem.
I'm going to get you some more technical questions, I think, here. So when a user opens self-service and logs in, and then they close it without, logging themselves out, do they get logged out?
Yep. That's all I'm going to say about that. Like Drew mentioned, we did add a feature, which is sort of the Remember Me feature. I don't know if you saw in the slides, but underneath the basic login username password, there was a checkbox. If the user wishes to be remembered on that Mac, and they go ahead and check that, we'll basically store their credentials in keychain in order to retrieve later on. And that keychain item is protected by the app, of course. If they do not do that, or if they have some other type of login, like SSO, then we don't remember them. Closing the app is equivalent to logging out.
Okay. And before I answer or ask some more questions, I do want to note again, we are iterating on this, so we love the feedback. If there's something that we aren't doing today, we want to hear about it because that means that we might look at doing it in the future. So just want to reiterate that point. We love the feedback. So again, with the doc icon, and you may have covered this already, but when updates are available, do we see anything on the doc icon?
Yes, so the way it's going to work with updates coming from patch, if a patch update is available, and there will be an icon or a little red with a number on circle on the doc icon to let them know there is an update available. With notifications, though, that is kind of for more towards self-service, and you'll see that blue dot up in the right-hand corner. So updates will be docked on the doc icon, and the notifications will be put in self-service.
All right, and I think this gets towards more of future iterations again, but so I go in and I see that I have an install, and I click on install, and now I have that secondary button. That might be open, for example, and that's really great. We love that. We know that people have been asking for that. What about the information text? The little information text there. Is there ability to change that?
The information text actually...
Pre and post install.
Oh.
Have we thought about that?
Good, yeah.
I believe the answer is no.
Yeah, not currently, but good question. Thank you.
Very
Puts
good
it on
question.
our radar.
This is why I say, we're going to be iterating on this. So if that's something that you're looking to do, if that's more than just a description of what you want that app to be, something they should know, if you want that to be dynamic, put it out there as a feature request on Jamf Nation and let us hear about it. All right. Anything with policies and how they display should they fail to install? And again, maybe you covered this in your demo.
Yeah, so that secondary text maybe is kind of the subtext of that question, will not show if the policy fails to install. We only switch over to that text if there's at least one successful run of the policy. And I don't know if you noticed the action button sort of showed a green check mark and a done, giving you a fuzzy feeling everything went well. It gives you a not so good feeling if it didn't go well. There's going to be a red text saying error, failed, something to that degree.
As well as we will, if it does fail, there will be a notification in their notification icon dropdown to let them know that that item failed as well.
Very good. How does self-service determine, and this is more behind the scenes, but how does it determine if an app is installed or not to change the tile?
Yeah, so just to give you an idea for the tech right now, the app is not sandboxed, if you're familiar with this term. So we do see the file system. So we're able to see, regardless of what the user may have done outside of self-service, if the .app file is installed or not. So it's based off of the state of the applications directory. If that .app file is there and there's a bundle identifier, we know it's there.
Very good. All right, I'm going to ask another branding question. Does the branding carry over to the notifications center?
Oh, yeah. As of right now, no. It's something that we're kind of looking into to see what our capabilities are.
Okay, very good. And wondering if self-service extensions are going to continue to be supported.
Self-service
Talking about plugins, most likely there.
Plugins, I assume, is what you're getting at? But feel free. So
Yeah.
plugins, yes, will
Yeah,
be
so
supported?
yeah, plugins, yeah. Plugins will be available. It will be in that in the left pane underneath the category, so they'll be able to click that. And over on the right, it will populate with all their plugins that are available to them, as well as if you utilize the scoping ability, and it will scope to that user or computer, or however you scope in your environment.
Very good. So for an admin who's setting up the secondary actions, how would they dictate or know if they should do like a reinstall versus like a repair?
I would have to punt and say it's up for them to make that decision, but it is available for them to change that the way they would want to with a policy. And then, yeah.
You know, honestly, I think it depends on what you're using the policy for. So, you know, provide the instruction text that's going to be the most useful to your user. If that is a repair action because of what the policy is doing, go ahead and change that to whatever is going to be the most meaningful for the user. Very good. All right, so like I said, we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll get to as many as I can. What about the policy icons themselves? Anything around changing those icons?
If they're referring to the default icons, we did update the default icons that you would see for policies, config, profiles, apps, and ebooks. Otherwise, we are currently using the same way the JSS is, or should say Jamf Pro now is currently working with the way we have the files and how it stores all the icons that you have available there.
I will plug that since this is a native app, we do recommend you use some higher resolution icons possibly. The best recommended size right now is 512 pixel by 512 pixel icons. So if you really want to give the most rich experience to your end users, not see any pixelated, 8-bit Nintendo looking kind of things, I recommend you go ahead and update those.
All right, we're getting into some of the more interesting ones now. Not that the other ones are not interesting, but from a notification standpoint, when a notification is there, can a user dismiss the notification in self-service without actually running the policy?
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but the badging is just there if there are new notifications. The minute that the user clicks on that notifications drop-down, the badging goes away. Items are still there in bold to indicate that they haven't even read them yet. And further, the notifications will just be there in a red state, but it doesn't matter if they've run the item or not. They'll continue to be there for now.
All right. Branding question on the banner. So can that be a video, a GIF? What kind of formats are allowed on that?
Currently, that will be an image. No GIFs or videos or anything like that.
Okay. Question about equipment. Will Jamf Self Service, ServiceNow, and this is related to the ServiceNow plugin, allow for equipment ordering through the app? So really, that's more of a question we can address in the ServiceNow session. So I'll defer that to that session. But it really is, it's a matter of what you've got set up in your ServiceNow environment. So we have a plugin for ServiceNow that allows you to have access to a lot of the functionality of the catalog, for example. So we can take a look more specifically at, what you'll be able to do. But it really is what you want to configure from the ServiceNow side and the self-service side. Now, I do know beyond the ServiceNow integration, if people are curious about what you can use self-service for, obviously it's policies, it's applications, it's printer configurations. We have a link to our site for ordering an iPhone, for example, so we just link it out to what we have internally. So if you're wondering about use cases for that, extending it out to HR functionality, a lot of great things that you can use self-service for. And there was a question also about I promote it to my customers, and I'm assuming this is maybe like a managed service provider or a reseller who recommends that they use self-service. How do you keep that top of mind so that people use self-service? It's really talking about the use cases of how it enables Apple in the environment and helps that whole organization and all those users do more with Apple products and technologies. So to give you an example, make it relevant for them. So, when I went to the New York office, I connected automatically to Wi-Fi. I installed the printer from self-service, and I printed. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to talk to IT. Worked out really great. So give them something that's a really good use case. Maybe, if you can provide that list of, hey, your users will love you if you do this in self-service, all a great thing. So I'm going to look through here for a few more that we have maybe not covered already. More questions kind of about iOS. Does the global button rely on any smart groups?
No.
No? You need to take longer to answer so I can find more questions.
It relies on 0 smart groups.
So let's talk a little bit about the progress indicator. So what are the plans or what have you done around installing an app and showing the progress to the user?
Yeah, so what we did was we did take that indicator that you have in the current self-service up above, and now we're utilizing that global action button. And hopefully we give enough feedback to the user that something is happening for them and kind of walk them through the steps, letting them know when something is going to be finished. We're still actually working out some of them details just to make sure that is a good end user experience for them, and making sure things aren't being hung up on them and they have to question it if this is actually installing. So we're doing some testing and working on some things that say some maybe policies that take a little bit longer. How can we make that end user experience a little bit better?
All right. Maybe one to defer to a patch session, but can scripts be triggered instead of packaged in the new patch management in self-service?
I'm just going to say I don't have that answer.
We'll defer that. So we do have a lot of sessions on patch management, and so obviously patch management and self-service have a lot of interaction, and we'll be happy to talk more about some of the tech and the future plans, because there's some, again, future technology that we're building into that that will be coming at a later date. A little bit more kind of specific question. Does the new self-service still utilize WebKit?
Okay, so I think that's a question sort of at the architecture of the app. The old self-service was, it had native components, but it was primarily a web page served up through a native shell. This app is fully native. We don't show any web views besides SSO integration, where we redirect to third-party providers for SAML.
Okay, we did get a clarification, so thank you on an earlier question about the secondary action label. And so the question is it really just a keyword that is put in? Is it just a string, or is it a different type of selected action? So is my secondary action something that is, it's just by default there is a secondary action, or are there options on those secondary actions?
Yeah, basically it just to, I guess for it to say like for a policy, it will just do the initial button over again. We don't have the option to say remove this policy or some other thing like that currently.
Yep. So it's like a do this again.
Do this again, yep.
Very good.
Specifically with a policy. Like with an app, we actually switch it and we actually can open the application. Same thing with an in-house ebook. You can open that in-house ebook right from self-service.
All right, and I think maybe we have time for a couple more questions. So for those who didn't get their questions answered, I apologize. Does self-service still use Safari to display web pages from the plugins?
So plugins are in current development right now, so we'll be working on some of that stuff in the, right now in the current sprints that we have. So we don't really have that answer right now, but that's good to know.
All right. Plans for adding widgets or third-party web based on local integrations?
Widgets or third-party web? I don't think we've got anything in the backlog around
Nothing.
widgets.
No, not right now.
So, things like that, if you're, looking to extend out the functionality and you can't do that with some of the things that you see today or what's planned, again, please go out to the Jamf Nation community and post that feedback. And I just want to say from all the sessions, again, a lot of really great posts here. We are out of time, so we don't have time for any more questions, at least for purposes of this session itself. Plenty of time to follow up. So, again, we do have the product booth over on the 4th floor. Feel free to seek out either Chris or Drew if you run into them. Again, best place to go also, if you're curious, is Jamf Nation. Get those feature requests out there. We were really excited to address this. And get some new functionality out for you and for your end users. So I just want to give a final round of applause to Drew and Chris for really all of Thunder Snow that's been working on this. It's been a wonderful effort, so thank you.
Thanks for coming.